IB Nation, we are back for another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It is Thursday, October 27th. I can't believe the month of October is almost over, Ryan. This season has flown by already. But Notre Dame is about to hit the big part of their stretch, Ryan. This is going to be sort of a who are you stretch. Coach Freeman kind of alluded to that on Monday. This is going to be sort of a make or break stretch of the schedule for Notre Dame. If they can get hot and finish strong with either a 4-1 or hopefully a 5-0 finish, then all of a sudden the narrative of this team changes a little bit. And this team has a chance to kind of go into the postseason with some momentum. But to do that, you need to get by step number one, which is a really good Syracuse team. Syracuse comes into this matchup 16th in the country. Their only loss was a 6-point road loss to Clemson this past weekend, a game that really, honestly, Syracuse controlled for a good chunk of the first half into the third quarter before Clemson was able to come back and put that game away late. So this is going to be a very tough test for the Irish. For whatever reason, this team has played better away from home this year. Obviously played very well against Ohio State. On the opener, they pounded North Carolina, who is every bit as good, if not maybe better overall than Syracuse, just because how dynamic their offense is. But this is going to be a very interesting matchup too, Ryan, because in order to beat Syracuse, parts of your team that haven't been playing well have to step up and play well. And that's the interesting part of this matchup, which we'll discuss as we get into the keys to victory. But just a golden opportunity here for Notre Dame. If they can achieve the keys that we're going to set forth and win this game, Ryan, this is this could be a big one for Notre Dame.
And I think that it's because of how you kind of phrased it, right? You're heading into the stretch of the schedule that is going to really show a lot of what you are, going from Syracuse into Clemson, down the road, you have USC, Boston College, and Navy kind of squashed in between. This is the stretch where you show if growth has kind of been continual and exponential throughout the process. So there's been a lot of hiccups. We've talked about it a ton. There's been uneven moments, obviously, very up and down, volatile, whatever word you want to use. Notre Dame has had it this season. But to your point, Brian, I mean, we're going into a 2-game stretch here where you're really going to show what you've learned at this point, right? And what the next step is, because talked about it a bunch, man. Coaches are judged based upon the adjustments that they make, and not just in-game adjustments from a week-to-week perspective, season perspective, from a few-game stretch perspective into a latter stage of the season. So big momentum potential here for Marcus Freeman and his staff that has been kind of up and down until this point, and it starts in which should be a very entertaining game in Syracuse, New York this weekend.
Which you will be there for that game,
yes,
as will I. So very much looking forward to that. Ryan, obviously the offense is really going to be the part of the game where you've seen this Notre Dame team struggle for all but really one game. And I wouldn't even count the UNLV game as an exception to that, because UNLV's defense is not very good. Notre Dame missed a lot of opportunities. I don't think they played all that well offensively. Just kind of overall, there were some good things here and there, but overall it was a performance that didn't live up to the potential of what this team should be. Really, the North Carolina game is the one exception. If Notre Dame is going to win this game, the offense has to play better. The only way they can win without the offense playing better is if the defense just has a lights out, just completely shuts Syracuse down. You can't win if you can't score. But that's also true for Notre Dame against a very good Syracuse defense. We did the stacking up a matchup of this yesterday. The written version of that stacking up is online at irishbreakdown.com. This is a tough test for Notre Dame. And this is going to be a test that says, hey, Coach Reese, if you want to, kind of be that guy that, is who everybody thought you were, and you're going to be this, great offensive mind and this guy that, can lead this team and do all these other type of things, then this is the kind of game where you've got to step up and perform well, Ryan. And also, you mentioned the narrative changing and adjusting. This is the opportunity for Tom Reese to make the adjustments. Yep. And he's going to need to if they're going to win. They can't just regurgitate the same game plan again.
No, I mean, they can't. I mean, this is one of those situations where you're playing against a good defense. We stacked it up yesterday, right? I mean, this is a defense where you're going to have to earn it, man. Like the secondary is not going to give it to you. The linebackers aren't going to give it to you. And the defensive line is going to play exceptionally hard. So I do think that this is don't want to call it a make or to break it performance for Tommy Rees, but like this is, if it was going to happen, it needs to happen now, right? Like this is the couple game stretch where you need your offense to really take that next step, because if you come into this game with a lackluster performance or some players aren't making plays, Syracuse has a good enough defense where they're just going to kind of do what they do,
Right.
like you need to make them uncomfortable. And right now you don't feel great about them having the ability to make them uncomfortable. The talent is there, but until you see it on the field, it's just a big question mark right now for Notre Dame.
I'd certainly feel they're capable of it. It's just about whether or not they're going to make the necessary changes to do it. Like you said, that's going to be the key. So let's talk about what the keys are to victory for Notre Dame in this game and looking at the offense. And the first one, number one, Ryan, it's going to be the same one as we always talk about recently, and that is start fast. And I thought that the first drive last week was really well done. You got into a 3rd and 10, that you didn't want to be there, but you made a play, you attacked, you pushed the tempo a little bit more than they normally do. There wasn't a ton of the scan stuff. They stayed on the script, and they went right down the field and scored a touchdown. After that, it was kind of a field goal fest, right? It was just not being able to capitalize on great field position time and time again. We've talked about it before, 7 drives to start the game inside the 20-yard line or inside UNLV territory. And you only got touchdowns on 3 of those, and one of them was the 7th trip in there. So you got to start fast. And look, this is going to be a loud environment. The Carrier Dome, from everyone that I've ever talked to, is a naturally loud environment. You don't need 100,000 people for it to be loud. It's indoors. It's going to be a sold-out stadium. There's not going to be as many Notre Dame fans as there normally is at a Syracuse game, because they made the right decision of not giving up this home game, which they have done so many times in the past. They gave up the home game in 2014. They gave up the home game in 2016 in order to play in an NFL stadium with more people. They can make more money. It was a smart decision by Syracuse to say, we're going to keep this one at home, because this is the chance that you have to have that home field advantage. Because when you play away from the Carrier Dome, then you start seeing a lot more Notre Dame fans showing up, right? Yeah. This is going to be a very pro-Syracuse crowd. It's going to be loud. It's going to be hopping. And what you have to do is you have to quiet them with your performance. And so the Notre Dame offense has to come out and be sharp early, move the chains, and put the ball in the end zone. That's going to be key. They're going to have to start fast. You do not want to get behind Syracuse, period, because they have the ability to make a game. They have the ability to shorten a game, right? We've talked about that. They're quite good at that, actually, at shortening games and limiting possessions with the way that they play offense. So you look at it, Ryan, and if you fall behind, that's going to be tough to come from behind. If you can get ahead of them, Syracuse is not a great come from behind team, and so that it adds even more importance to Notre Dame getting off with a very fast start in this game.
It's funny that you mentioned that about, playing in the Carrier Dome, or apparently it's called something different than the Carrier Dome, Brian.
Nope.
I don't know if you.
Nope. At Irish Breakdown, it's the Carrier Dome. I don't want to hear any JMA wireless dome. I don't hear any of that stuff.
I just saw that on Twitter yesterday. I'm like, oh, it's not the Carrier Dome anymore. And I had no idea.
Tommy said that in his press conference. He's like, yeah, it's got some other name now, but it's the Carrier Dome to me. And I'm like, you know what, Coach? For the first time all year, we're on the same page. It's the Carrier Dome. We'll sell out So anyway, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just talking to someone, I think it was last night, and they were asking me about my opinion on the game. And I said, Notre Dame's been playing pretty well away from the home stadium. On the road, they've been a pretty good football team for the most part. And then someone brought this up, and I thought it was an interesting point. They said, the Carrier Dome, that's what they called it as well. They said that's probably going to be the most hostile environment that Notre Dame's been at this year, sort of. And I'm like, well, they played Ohio State at the Shoe, so I don't know if that's quite true. But To your point, it's going to be an interesting environment, obviously, right? You're going to be playing in a pro Syracuse stadium where, they're riding into this game, number 16 in the country. They're, the team that is supposed to win this game, which is pretty wild, against a talented but inconsistent Notre Dame team. Like, the stadium's going to be rocking, man. And these players are going to have a lot of energy early on in this football game. And one thing that I've talked about, and I know I think we both have talked about it. We definitely talked about it last week. There's just some games where Notre Dame comes in and you just don't feel the energy. Like you talked about it at UNLV, right? Like they're just in warm-ups and you just don't really feel it, right? Like there's just not a lot of juice to what they're kind of looking like preparation anyway, right? So this is a very important game. Going into a road game against a top 20 team in the country in a potentially somewhat hostile environment, I agree 100%. Notre Dame, just in general, they need to silence this crowd early on, or else they're going to be riding this energy because, I mean, it's been – what, 4 years now since Syracuse put together a quality product on the field? Like, it's been a few years.
Yeah,
it's been a few years, and this is foreign right now to them, to Syracuse fans and the players and staff, pertinent to what it's been over the last couple of years. So they're going to be ready. They're going to be rocking. And I agree. It's that, we're taking it from an offensive perspective, but just from an all-encompassing perspective, you got to come out and you got to play fast. You got to knock this team in the mouth a little bit because it's going to be easy for this team if things are rolling well early to really keep capturing that energy and that momentum, because they have all the momentum going into this game from just how their season has kind of been, fulfilling, how their coaching staff looks a lot better than it did coming into the year, from what their players' confidence level is. Syracuse has a lot going for them coming into this football game. So Notre Dame has to be able to knock them down a couple of plays early on.
Well, and this is also, if you look at their attendance, I chuckle at the whole most hostile environment thing. It's a 49,000 seat stadium. So with all due respect, and I know it's indoors, right? So it captures all of that noise. It keeps it indoors, and it was built in a way to make it loud. But I'm going to still go with the 106,000 at Ohio State and stick with that one. It's the more hostile environment. However, to the point, it's a very challenging environment, not just because of the noise, but the lighting is weird with the white top and all teams that play basketball there will talk about how it's got a really weird background where it's kind of hard to see the rim. And if you're not, take some getting used to and things like that. And so I think there can be some challenges catching the football, right? I mean, those are going to be things to watch, catching the football, fielding punts, things along those lines are going to be challenges for Notre Dame, and you've got to be sharp and crisp. But this is, speaking of starting fast, you look at Syracuse's home crowd so far. They had 37,000 in the opener against Louisville. That's over 10,000 below their average. They had 36,000 against Purdue, 34.5 against Virginia, 33 against Wagner. They were way under their capacity in those games. And then it wasn't until the NC State game when Syracuse fans were finally like, hey, we're actually pretty good, and then they sold it out, right? And so then obviously since then they've lost to Clemson. So I think Syracuse fans are kind of late to the party about how good this team is. So I do expect them to be pretty feverish when they play Notre Dame. It's hey, we're actually pretty good, combined with, hey, we're playing Notre Dame. Yep. And the opportunity that presents. They haven't watched a Notre Dame game on campus since 2003. So it's going to be a hop in place, and you've got to really continue to build that energy and that emotion and build on what you did last week. Number 2 point, Ryan, number 2 key is Drew Pine has to have a good game. Now, this is a kind of a threefold type of situation, right? It's not just about Drew. That means Tom Reese has to put a good game plan together, one that Drew is comfortable with. It means letting Drew get into rhythm, which is hard to do with the nonstop scan. So limit the scan. I don't think that they will, but it's important for them to do it because that's going to allow Drew to get into some kind of rhythm. So it's up to the game plan to make him comfortable. When he does put the ball where it needs to get to, Braden Lindsey's got to make that catch. Michael Mayer can't drop that ball in the end zone. Those type of things can't happen. He's going to need some help. Sometimes he's going to put the ball up. It's not a great throw, and you've got to go make a play on it like Jaden Thomas did against BYU, right? And so there's going to be those opportunities. His teammates got to help him out. And then you look at Drew Pine, he's got to make the right decisions. He's got to go through his progressions. He's got to make the right reads. He's got to get the ball out on time. He's got to go through the reads with the proper timing. Not too slow, not too fast. Go with the reads with the proper timing and trust the system. Trust your teammates. Don't just immediately go to Michael Mayer when you get into a pinch. And that's also part of the game plan thing too, Ryan, is making sure that you have a game plan that understands. We know Syracuse is going to have a Michael Mayer plan. How can we be prepared for that and take advantage of that, especially early, to make them pay right away for the emphasis that they're going to put on Michael Mayer? But at the end of the day, Drew's got to make the right throws. He's got to get the ball where it needs to get to. I can blame Tommy Rees for a lot of things. I can't blame Tommy Rees for a fastball to Tobias Merriweather that needs to be put high and soft. Right? That's on Drew. Right? I can't put it on Tommy. I can't put everything on Tommy Rees. At some point, Drew's got to step up and say, hey, I'm the leader of this team. I'm the quarterback. I got to go make these plays. Because if they're going to beat Syracuse, Drew, if they're going to start fast, it's going to require Drew to come out and play well early And if they're going to put Syracuse away and hang on in the second half, because Syracuse is not going to go away, then Drew's going to have to be good then too. So it's going to really require Drew Pine to have a North Carolina, even a BYU-esque performance if they're going to win this game. We've seen him do it, and he's been better away from home than he's been at home. So maybe there's something to that, but he's going to have to look like he did, and starts 2-3 as opposed to starts 1, 4, and 5.
In our Stacking Up show yesterday, Brian, we talked a lot about the Notre Dame passing offense against the Syracuse pass defense. And I mean, that's the biggest differential in this football game coming in, right? It's like Syracuse has to feel good about their chances to limit the ability for Notre Dame to throw the football. You have to feel like it after the last couple games Notre Dame has had, after the consistency pretty much across the board that Syracuse has had all season, and the guys that they have in their secondary. This is the matchup where Syracuse looks at it and says, we got that one. We're winning that matchup. That's ours. So what does Notre Dame need to do? They need to flip the script on them, man. That's what it comes down to, right? I mean, you've seen the moments where you're like, okay, you gave Jaden Thomas a shot. He made a big 50-50 ball. That's awesome. You've seen moments where you're like, Braden Lindsey's open all day. You've seen Michael Mayer do what Michael Mayer does. You've seen the running backs, when you involve them in the passing game, that they're pretty good, man, and they give you a lot of different opportunities, right? There is elements of good here. And you've seen Drew Pine, when comfortable, is a good football player when he's comfortable and he's moving along and he's in rhythm. And in this game, it's equally as important because if you have a lot of mistakes against the secondary, they'll make you pay. And this is the situation and the matchup where they have kind of just put it in ink on paper already that Notre Dame's not going to pass the ball against us. And you have to change that narrative. You have to flip the script in order for you to come on the road and beat a number 16 team in the country, a team that you're supposed to lose to according to Vegas, right? Whatever. You need to make them uncomfortable. Making them uncomfortable is making them go, oh, they are a little better passing team than maybe we gave them credit for. They have a little more explosiveness than we maybe gave them credit for. Haven't seen it consistently, but if there's a game that you need to put it together for the whole game, this is the one, because I have maintained this one. I know we talked about it yesterday. I think we both agree on it. This is the best secondary that you're going to play all year.
Yeah.
All year. Best one by far. And they're a confident bunch. Deuce Chestnut, Garrett Williams, they play with swagger. They do. You have to make some plays on them. You have to make them uncomfortable. You have to attack the opportunities that you have. It's paramount in this football game that Drew Pine and this passing attack gets in rhythm early, gets comfortable, and has a consistent form of success that we haven't seen consistently throughout the season.
Ryan, another thing is they have to find ways to make big plays. I think the offensive line can have a day. And we won't have in here like you got to run the ball, because that's now in the standpoint of a given. Like running the ball effectively and don't turn it over are kind of like givens. You should assume that that's something they need to do right now. And I think the Notre Dame offense can do that. But I don't think, however, that this team is good enough. I don't think you can make the leap from what they've been all year to all of a sudden against the best defense you've faced since the opener to all of a sudden say, okay, now you're going to go out and just consistently put together 7-8 play drives and punch it into the end zone 6 times. At some point, they're going to have to generate big plays. And that's the next key. Early in the year, they were creating big plays, but they weren't able to, they were terribly inefficient. Then the big plays have kind of gone away for the most part in recent games. And they're going to have to find a way to get back to that. Pass game wise, run game wise, that requires some creativity, obviously, from Tommy Rees. It requires you to get your players into some matchups that they're comfortable with, make sure that Drew Pine is comfortable with where he's going to go with the football. And then you got to execute. There are big plays to be had, but it's going to require good scheme, but also at some point in time, kind of like Charlie Jones did to Garrett Williams when they matched up. At some point, you got to make a great throw, which Aiden O'Connell did, and then your receivers got to make a great play, which is what Charlie Jones did twice in the fourth quarter to beat Garrett Williams for big plays. The margin for error is very thin when you throw on him, but it's there. So, that means being smart. Put Tobias Merriweather and Deion Colsey on him at times. Put Michael Mayer on him at times. Find some things that you can take advantage of what they're doing to create some and generate some big plays. They're going to need that. Obviously, if we see a heavier dose of RPOs, if we see a mix-up of the run game, I think that is where Notre Dame can rip off some big plays. We saw Clemson do that to them late in the game on Saturday. So there's opportunities for big plays against them, but you have to earn them. Syracuse is going to make you earn them. and Notre Dame's going to have to earn them because I just don't see this team consistently moving the ball up and down the field and getting to 30 points that way. I think they're going to need 3 or 4 big plays in this game. They don't have to necessarily result in touchdowns, although that's more ideal because it increases your red zone offense isn't needed then, which has been an issue. But the big plays are going to be a key part of this game. There's no question about it.
At the end of the day, and we've talked about this every single game, this is one outside of the Ohio State game where Notre Dame has more talent. Like, let's just call it what it is, right? They are a more talented team than what Syracuse has. But right now, Syracuse is playing, and I'm talking wide receiver versus secondary perspective, pass catcher versus secondary perspective. Syracuse is playing better football, obviously. But at the end of the day, you still have an advantage one-on-one athletically with some of the cornerbacks and defensive backs that Syracuse has. All due respect to Garrett Williams, I think he's a potential All-American. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he'll play in the NFL, and he'll play in the NFL for a long time. But at the end of the day, I will still take a matchup of Tobias Merriweather one-on-one with Garrett Williams and see what happens. I'll still make that. I'll still take that opportunity. And that goes for Lorenzo Styles and Braden Lindsey and spurts. Like, there's opportunities out there. Michael Mayer into the boundary, like we talked about yesterday, right? Like, that's an opportunity that I think could be on the table. And no matter how good their secondary is, you have to trust your guys to make a play one-on-one. And in order for them to make a play one-on-one, Brian, you have to put your guys in position to do it, right? Like, I feel like the only time we've seen it is like Jaden Thomas, and he surprised you, and he made a play, and he was a great play. Let's take the shackles off a little bit, right? There's no easier way to inject confidence into a quarterback than to say, Drew, like, we're just going to let you fly, man. Let it fly. Get the ball out there. Take a shot. And if you hit 1 or 2 early, then you're rolling. Because the confidence will be there. And then the secondary will have to make an adjustment, not to say, I can't just do this and get away with it right now. Like, I have to be better in this process. Maybe I have to play a little more 2-man where I work, a safety over top instead of bringing him down into the box. Then the numbers battle gets into your favor a little bit. But at the end of the day, you need to not only create explosive plays, but you need to win one-on-one matchups. That's because, let's call it what it is. Syracuse is going to say a lot during this game early, in my opinion. Garrett, shut down whoever's across from you. You don't need much help, right? You got him one-on-one. Sure. Deuce Chestnut, you got him, right? Yep, sure. I do. And you know that they're confident players, so they will be up for the challenge. In order to make Syracuse have to rethink their strategy, you have to make a couple one-on-one opportunities. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. Does that be the first play of the game? But is there a chunk play opportunity? Is there a one-on-one shot? Do you locate one-on-one outside and just take the go and just put it up there and let your guy get an opportunity to make a play? And that is on coaching. And then after that, if the coaching does make that decision, then your player has to win that one-on-one matchup. Yep. Got to win one-on-one matchups in this game.
I mean, you say that, and it's just kind of like, man, like, how can they think that about Lorenzo Styles and Braden Lindsey? But I mean, if you've broken down Notre Dame's film the first 7 weeks, you're like, yeah, I'm going to take. I mean, if you remove yourself from, let's say you've only watched Notre Dame this year, and you didn't watch him last year, you didn't see Lorenzo in the bowl game, you didn't see what he did last year against Virginia, North Carolina, and USC and those teams. You've only watched them this year. You've only watched Braden Lindsey this year. You're going to say, well, I'm not worried about Braden Lindsey because even when he gets open, they'll throw it to him. And then you're like Lorenzo Styles, like the kid doesn't really get separation. And when they do throw it to him, he doesn't catch the ball. And 83 is, completely misused. 15 is kind of a problem, but they've only thrown him 2 balls in 7 games. So, I mean, why would you not trust your secondary, which is to me, the best part of your football team, in my opinion? To do anything other than to do one-on-one. And also, the other part of it is if you only watch Notre Dame this year, if Notre Dame can't run a ball this season, they don't score. They cannot score if they don't get their run game going. And so, yeah, I'm gonna maybe alter my coverage pre-snap and to get extra bodies in the box because I do trust not just my corners, but the way that they've played this year and the way Syracuse plays this year, I trust my safeties to be able to cover Notre Dame slots man-to-man. And so those are other aspects of it too, Ryan, that allows you to then, insert your rover in more into the box to, coming off the edge and crashing the edge and doing things like that. Because it's not like Notre Dame's going to pull and throw an RPO outside, at least based on what you've seen. So there's so many things that you've seen on film that you say, Syracuse would be foolish not to just say, hey, Deuce, hey, Garrett, hey, Elijah, hey, Jihad, hey, go lock these dudes down, right? We'll have a plan for Michael Mayer, right? We'll have a plan for 87, but I need you guys to go out and win those battles. I would do that if I was them. So for the Notre Dame receivers, it's important that they step up and play well and have their game. This is a great, shake off all the rust or, get the bad vibes or whatever the case may be. This is the kind of game that we talked about, the narrative changing as a team and as an offense. For the receiving core, this is a big-time narrative-changing opportunity for you. Because, you can have success against Clemson next week, but with all due respect, it's not a very good secondary. Mm-hmm. This is a much better secondary right now that you're going to face. So you've got to be able to come out and thrive. Will they do it? Don't know. But they need to if they're going to win this game. And the last key, Ryan, is they've got to finish. And this really refers specifically to drives, right? Mm-hmm. That means converting third downs, moving the chains, and when you get the ball in the red zone, you need touchdowns, not field goals. That's the key, especially early. So it kind of ties back to point number one, Ryan. They're going to have to finish. If they can come out and finish well, right, start fast, finish off drives with 6 points instead of 3, then you're going to have a chance to really get rolling. But finishing off drives with touchdowns is going to be a big key. And then finishing off plays. Notre Dame has left a lot of individual plays, drop passes here and there, missed blocks, missed reads. They're going to have to finish those things off and execute at a higher level. If they do that, then I do think they can move the ball relatively well. If you get a chance for a big play, we said earlier, it doesn't have to be a touchdown, but it'd be nice, then take that pressure off your offense to then score. Because Syracuse is a pretty good red zone defense this year, partly because of how good their secondary is. Because they can just go man up. They're 6-foot kids with long arms. They present like a really wide radius, to throw around. It can make it challenging. And Notre Dame doesn't really throw to their big guys in the red zone. So it's not like you can take advantage of that. So you got to finish off drives. You got to finish off plays. You need touchdowns, not field goals. That's a big, because I don't know how many scoring opportunities you're going to get against Syracuse. Right. So when you get them, especially early, you need touchdowns. Because what can happen, Ryan, is if you're able to get touchdowns early, let's say Notre Dame's able to jump on Syracuse, 17-7 in the first half. Let's just say hypothetically. Mm-hmm. You now get into situations where if you punch one more touchdown in there in the second half and you can put Syracuse behind 24-10 or even 24-14 in the second half, now they have to get outside of their game plan, and that's where you can then have some success defensively at creating some mistakes and potentially turning them over, something Syracuse doesn't do. Because honestly, Ryan, they haven't had to play from behind very much this year. Right. I mean, they've been like neck and neck with people all year. Like the Purdue game was like 6-3, 9-6, really close, and then they kept scoring back and forth in the fourth quarter. The Virginia game was a very similar deal. They were way out. They were out on NC State early. They were out on Louisville early. They were out on UConn early. They were out on Wagner early, and then they were up on Clemson early. So they haven't had to play from behind really at all this year. So this is a chance to say, okay, let's see how good they are, because no team has been able to get Syracuse out of their game plan. Not one. Mm-hmm. It's going to be up to the Notre Dame offense to help their defense accomplish that by putting early scores on the board. So start fast by moving the ball, and then your next step is then when you do move, you put the ball in the end zone.
This is one thing that good teams do, and this is one thing that Syracuse does really well, is they make everything difficult for you, right? Nothing's easy, which is, I mean, if I can give a compliment to a team, like that's the biggest one, because what Syracuse does offensively and defensively is offensively, they control the tempo. They don't really shoot themselves in the foot, and they keep the ball kind of moving, right? Defensively, they keep everything in front of them. They don't give up explosive plays. I mean, we saw the stat yesterday, right? They give up less than 10 yards per completion on the season. They literally do not give up big plays. Keep everything in front of them. Make offense have to establish long drives to score. That's what they do, right? That's what has been the recipe for success, and why they've only given up 15-point-something points per game up until this point, which would be a little higher if they hadn't played what's their names? The New York FCS team, Wagner. I always forget their name, but it's something where they're going to make everything very difficult for Notre Dame. And in that sense, Notre Dame has to be ready, and they have to be – that's why efficiency is so important in this game because, look, we talk about them needing to create a couple big plays, and I truly believe that, right? Because that's something that Syracuse does really well, so you kind of need to flip the script on them in that department. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame's game is also built off of efficiency when they're rolling, when they're playing well offensively. And when you're an efficient football team, you can't have 7 drives inside a team's on the other side of the team's field and only score 3 touchdowns. Like, you can't do that, right? Like, that's what makes a team stay in a football game or makes a win uglier than it has to be or makes you lose. Those are the outcomes that happen when you don't finish off drives. Notre Dame needs to do that in this game because, again, this is something that Syracuse has shown that they do well. So in order to defeat a good Syracuse team, you have to make something that they do well and flip the script and make it a weakness in this football game. Finish off drives, finish off the red zone opportunities. Those things have kind of been a little bit of a Achilles heel to Notre Dame throughout the season for the most part, and they need to right that ship because you have the elements to be good at that, Brian. Like, you have the elements. You have a huge tight end who's got a massive catch radius. You have a couple wide receivers that, if you use properly, have a lot of opportunities to do that. And then you have a good offensive line, and you have some powerful runners that should be able to finish in short yardage situations. So this is the game. A team that doesn't really shoot themselves in the foot much, you have to make some things that are usually difficult for teams that play them a little bit easy in this football game. Big key in this one.
And Ryan, everything you just said is why this is such a big game for Notre Dame. Because if Notre Dame turns the corner offensively against this defense, it's not going to – because like the North Carolina game, I mean, you can kind of chalk that up to they're not very good on defense. And that's true. They're not very good on defense. Now, they've been better since Notre Dame played them, but they're still not very good on defense. And you look at different aspects of what Notre Dame likes to do. They're not a very good throwing team. They don't throw the ball very well. Syracuse is one of the 10 to 15 best pass defenses in the country. Their secondary is without question, one of the 10 best. Now, I don't know if I could say I've seen enough teams to say they're top 5. There's still teams I need to watch more of, but I've seen enough teams to comfortably say they're top 10. And so they are good where Notre Dame has not been good. So if Notre Dame performs well in these areas that we talked about, it's not just a key to victory, but a lot of what we talk about in these keys to victory recently has been not just winning this game, but then getting yourself sort of springboard yourself into future success. And so I think that's what's important about this. All the things you just talked about, they're things that Syracuse is very good at that Notre Dame is not very good at. So if you have success there, it's going to be because you did something different, whether that be executed better, game plan adjustments. As I wrote in the midweek musings yesterday, Ryan, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, if you really break it down, as maddening as this offense has been, they're not that far off. This is not something that requires a massive transfusion of players. It doesn't require you to switch from the current scheme to an air raid. It's hit the open receivers that are there. Early in the season, it was because the line wasn't giving them protection. But if you just say, if they simply just hit the plays that were there, not even without changing a single thing schematically, hit the plays that are there, don't have dumb turnovers, and you're talking about you've got at least another touchdown against Ohio State. Let's say you still lose, but you have another touchdown. You have at least 2 more touchdowns against Marshall because you have one at the end of the first half and you have one in the fourth quarter. So that's a blowout win all of a sudden. You look at the next game against Cal. You had 1 big touchdown opportunity that you missed in that game. So that adds a touchdown to the board. North Carolina, you missed 2 big touchdown opportunities. You had the miss to Michael Mayer up the sideline, and then Audric Estime fumbles the ball into the end zone. So now you're talking about that game is now all of a sudden 59 points. Then you fast forward to the next week against BYU. I think for the most part, they took advantage of their opportunities that were there down the field, but then you missed the play against Logan Diggs. You miss him open for what would have been a touchdown. So all of a sudden, 28 turns into 32. I mean, there's all types of different things that you look at and say, and then, of course, Stanford, there was missed opportunities. That's the one that you say there weren't as many opportunities there because the play calling was so bad. That's a game where it wasn't a whole lot different, maybe a field goal. And then last week against UNLV, there were tons of opportunities to turn a 44-point outburst into a 62-point outburst. So the point is, it's not like there hasn't been stuff there. Braden Lindsey's been wide open. Braden Lynch should have 6 or 7 touchdowns right now. Just easy touchdowns. Like, not even like he's got to go make a play like he did against Cincinnati last year, or Ohio State early, like where the dude's open by 3-4 yards. I mean, if not more. You know, there's been plenty of opportunities for this team to if they simply execute better, and that's where, you know, there's some validity to that comment. But the point is, the execution issues come from a lack of confidence, a lack of certainty in what they're doing that comes from, you know, too broad of scope from a play calling standpoint, you know, trying to have more volume, not enough being really good at something, all those type of things. The point is, it's not like this Notre Dame team needs to just reinvent themselves. They need to make some tweaks, but then just hit the stuff that's there. And if they do that, then all of a sudden this team breaks out. Because I truly believe this. If Tommy Rees is willing to look in the mirror and say, you know what, this is on me. This is my fault. And I didn't do enough to really get the most out of this team. And I use this excuse and that excuse, but this is on me. And then he just makes tweaks. Again, you don't need to revolutionize your offense. Just make some tweaks. Use RPOs, right? Mix up your run game a little bit more. Mix it up outside, inside. And, you know, maybe rely a little bit more on your screen game because in your pocket movement with Drew Pine, because he's not a big-armed guy. Those are all things within the scheme that we've seen at least a little bit of this year. If you simply just make those tweaks and then Drew Pine starts hitting just some of the throws that he's not seeing or missing on, all of a sudden this offense becomes a 2-touchdown better offense than what they've been. Just that. Yep. And if you can do it against this defense, then I start feeling really good about their ability to do it in future games. Because I still think this is the best defense they're going to face all year across the board. Clemson has, without question, the best has the best defensive line. I think the linebacker production is very similar. You know, I think Trenton Simpson's probably a better NFL prospect. Barrett Carter's a better NFL prospect. But with where they are in their development right now, the Syracuse kids they belong in a conversation of who has the best linebacking core in the ACC. Secondary is not close. It's not even close. Secondary is not. It's not nowhere in the same universe. So if you do it this week, then, okay, it's something to build on, and this team can get some confidence. Because if they can make some tweaks and gain some confidence, this offense has better players than people give it credit for. And then I would like to hear what people have to say about, it's a talent problem, right? And so you have to think at some point in time it's going to happen. But, you know, I just said that 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. We'll see if it'll happen this week. But if it does, Ryan, that's what gives this team a chance to not just win, right? But it's like what I said to you on, was it Monday? I said, dude, if Drew Pine has a good game, they're going to roll Syracuse. I'll say that publicly because there's stuff there. There are matchups there where you're like, man, Notre Dame should be able to thrive in that matchup because they have unique weapons that other teams do not have that they've played. Whether or not they'll take advantage, I have very little confidence that they will do it, but they should do it. And that's the fun thing about this matchup.
I hope they'll do it because it'll be my first time in the Carrier Dome, and it'll be great to cover and watch and enjoy the day.
Your last 2 games haven't gone all that well, Ryan. So I was really rethinking calling Notre Dame and saying that they need to deny your credential request.
I still blame my wife on that one. But you know, so she doesn't listen to this show, so I can.
Well, hold on now, but your wife wasn't at the previous game that you were at. There was also a Notre Dame loss, Cincinnati last year.
Yeah, she doesn't come to the games and they lose.
Oh, because she doesn't come.
Yeah,
So
she doesn't come to the
Syracuse game?
Nope.
Okay, so then nothing's changed. Well, they're screwed. I'm gonna have to
it's not a home game though. The rules don't apply anymore.
And you're not going as a fan, you're going to work. So that'll be
100%. Yeah. Now I feel like Syracuse defense might be a little bit of a truth serum though for this opportunity, Brian. Like it's one of those things where if it doesn't happen now, if it doesn't happen now, I'm not going to get excited about it happening against Navy.
Sure.
Right. Like I'm not going to get excited about it happening against Boston College.
Right.
Like
they're not good. Right.
It's a make it or break it time. Right. Like we have backed up, and I will keep backing this even if they don't play well, that there's not a talent problem at Notre Dame. I've been super
not relative to who's on their schedule this year.
Yes.
Is there a talent problem to go beat Georgia? Sure. Right now,
yes,
sure.
Right. There's not a talent problem to go beat Syracuse at Syracuse this weekend.
Or Stanford or Marshall or right. Exactly. Or even Clemson, to be honest with you.
Yep.
So anyway, that's the interesting part of it, Ryan, is it just comes down to you didn't do what you needed to do to get the most out of this group. And we'll find out if that changes or not.
Yep.
Let's move over to defense, Ryan, and talk about the keys to victory for the Notre Dame defense. Obviously, there are certain things that are givens. You want to force turnovers and things like that. But the first thing is this is kind of, we're going to build, a lot of times we do our keys, we kind of build on things. We didn't do that quite as much on offense this week because there's just some unique aspects to the keys to success against their Syracuse defense. But we're going to do a little bit more of that this week, Ryan. And the first thing is when Notre Dame's defense has been really good this year, like the stretches where it's been good, it's really good on first and second down. And against a team like Syracuse, where, we're going to talk about the run game in a little bit, but this is true bigger picture. This first point is going to be a little bit bigger picture. If you can limit the run game success on early downs, force incompletions on early downs, because Robert and I does a decent job of finding pass game opportunities, like kind of safe pass game opportunities on early downs to try to just kind of keep them. They want to play ahead of the sticks all game long. They want to play ahead of the sticks. If you can have first down success against Syracuse, Ryan, that is where you can really have success keeping them in check, because this is not a great Syracuse offense. But here's the deal. You look at their offense this year, Ryan, they've had 77 third down opportunities. That ranks second to last in the entire country, meaning they don't get into a lot of third downs. Teams have not been able to put them in a lot of third downs. Why? Because they do a great job of staying ahead of the sticks. And so if they can have some success there, then I think this gives them a chance to be good, because that's what Clemson did, right? Clemson and Purdue, the two games that were the closest to losses for Syracuse, they were 3 for 11 against Clemson on third down and 3 for 12 against Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
If you can kind of mirror that success, then you have a chance to stop them. They were 4 for 8 against NC State. NC State could never get them behind the sticks. They just methodically went down the field. If you can have first and second down success, you are built defensively to do things that will give them a lot of problems on offense. And so I think the defense matches up a lot better than the offense does against Syracuse. I think the Notre Dame defense matches up well against them, but will the game plan be sound? Will the execution be there? But early down success, Ryan, is an absolute must for Notre Dame in this game.
Use the perfect word. It was methodical. That's how you define Syracuse. They want to run the football. They have a really good running back in Sean Tucker. They have a really good running quarterback. Yes, really good, like a top 10 running back in college football. He's a very, very good football player. You have a really good rushing quarterback in Garrett Schrader. So you have the read game that's going to work off of that. And look, I give Robert and Nye and this coaching staff a lot of credit, because they have turned what Garrett Schrader was a below average passer last year. He was not a good passer.
And that's being nice. Ryan's in a good mood today. So, yes.
Yes, and they've turned him from a below-average quarterback, as I'll term it, into a good quarterback this year, man. He is efficient. He's taking advantage of the opportunities that are there, and he's making the plays that he should make. And that's perfect for this offense, right? For a team that has made they're buttering their bread based upon their ability to run the football. The fact that off of play action, off of RPO action, those are the opportunities where this year Garrett Schrader is just clicking at a much higher level, and they're getting him some easy reads and some easy opportunities, and he's making the plays that he should make. That's fantastic. How do you make that uncomfortable? How do you change that? Put him behind the sticks a little bit, where you can run RPO if you want, but on 3rd and 10, it's not going to help you as much as it was on 3rd and 4, right? That's not going to be the situation that you want to be in this game in particular. So I think it's twofold. One, Syracuse wants to run the football. That is their identity. Getting them behind the sticks makes it less likely that you can run the football at a higher volume on the third down opportunities that you get. Other side of this is that their passing game is built off of their ability to run the football. If you can't run the football, you're going to make Garrett Schrader do things in the passing game that he's not as comfortable doing. Dropping back, a more traditional 3, 5, 7-step drop, and having to really win as a passer in structure. That's where he doesn't want to play his game consistently. He's done it better this year, but it's still not his style. So if you're able to win on early downs, you're not only limiting the rushing attack, obviously, but you're also putting Garrett Schrader in this passing attack in situations that is not advantageous for them to be as good as they can be.
I think the thing too is I would much rather see Sean Tucker making a lot of catches than running the ball. Because if he's making a lot of catches, it means that they are putting them in a lot of second and long, third and long situations, which is when he becomes a weapon in the pass game. Now, obviously, you want to make sure that you can keep him in check, but it does mean you're having early game success. Number 2, Ryan, obviously kind of builds on this, and that is Notre Dame has to keep the run game in check. Have to keep the run game in check. Syracuse, again, Notre Dame controls the ball really well. Syracuse wants to kind of be methodical, as we talked about. They want to run the football effectively. If they're able to kind of come out and just pound the game, all of a sudden this game gets really shortened because both teams are going to play a similar game, and it means that Notre Dame is going to be in a situation where they're not going to have as many possessions in this game, which doesn't necessarily bode well for them. So if you can make it's important every week, but I think it's even more important this week because these next 2 points are going to kind of go together. Actually, let's put the 2 keys together, Ryan, and talk about them together. It's going to be too hard to kind of differentiate them because we're going to have to leave things out. Point 2 is you've got to really shut down the run game. And point 3, you've got to contain Garrett Schrader as a scrambler. Now, The run game part includes Tucker and Schrader because they will do designed runs for him. He's not just a scrambler. He's not Ian Book. He's more Brandon Wimbush in how he's used. Now, they're different athletes, but I'm referring to Brandon Wimbush made plays as a designed runner and a scrambler. Ian Book was primarily a scrambler. Both effective, just used differently. Garrett Schrader is more Brandon Wimbush in that he will use his legs as a scrambler, but also as a designed runner. And you saw it from the numbers last year.
Think about how Mississippi State used to use their quarterbacks because he was literally a Mississippi State quarterback, right? When Dan Mullen was there, think past Dak Prescott, but think of like the Nick Fitzgeralds of the world. Like that's the style that he wants to run, right? Like that's the quarterback that Garrett Schrader is. Big, athletic, powerful runner that you want to be able to do enough in the passing game, but the bread, again, is buttered his ability as an athlete in the run game. So if you want to think about the Dan Mullen era at Mississippi State, because that's literally what Garrett Schrader was recruited to be at one point in his life.
Right. So if you can keep Sean Tucker from really beating you with his legs and you can limit the effectiveness of Garrett Schrader, then I think those are things that can lead to success. And then containing Garrett Schrader. So this is the key. He's the kind of quarterback that you can be great on first and second down, put them in third and 8, lose contain by one guy up front, lose integrity. Your D tackle runs past the quarterback, and next thing you know, it's a first down. He can do that to you. And that can be a killer for a team, especially on the road. And so you want to stop him from being effective as a runner in all ways. And part of that means if you want to heat Syracuse up, heat them up. I'm cool with that. But you need to make sure that whatever you're doing, whether you're dropping 8 into coverage, because honestly, in third and 8, I would consider dropping 8 in this game. And then keeping because what you can do is you can have one of your linebackers and whoever you're dropping up front kind of sitting there in intermediate zones where there's really nowhere for him to take off and run. But if you want to heat him up, that's fine. But whoever's coming, you've got to have pass rush lane integrity. You can't run, if you're an interior guy or a linebacker, you can't run past him. What that means is if I'm getting a push and I'm not getting over to him, I've got to stop and control my gap and not let him step inside of me and then run outside, which happens so much against Cal. Yep. So if you can keep Garrett Schrader from really taking this game over with his legs, you're going to have success, because the one thing Syracuse doesn't want to do, they do not want this to be a game where he has to sit back in the pocket, throw the ball 30-plus times out of need from the pocket against this Notre Dame defense. That's not where you want to be.
Right.
It's not where you want to be. So that's going to those 2 keys kind of go together, Ryan, is don't let Sean Tucker beat you and keep Garrett Schrader in check as much as you can as a runner, especially in passing downs.
Brian, I'm going to say something, and then I'm curious if you agree, disagree, what your kind of take is on what I'm going to say here. So I think the formula for this is because, I agree 100%. Sean Tucker's a guy for me that, that is point number one. You got to stop that kid. You got to stop him. I actually would be okay with Garrett Schrader having a decent amount of rushing attempts. It's just about being efficient in stopping him. Because if he has a decent amount of rushing attempts, that means that Sean Tucker is probably not getting a ton of rushing attempts. And if you now have the efficiency stopped on him, if he has, let's say, 13 to 14 carries, but it's for 37 yards or something like that, right? They weren't efficient. And also the ball was not in Sean Tucker's hands. So at the end of the day, I want to keep it out of that kid's hands. And Garrett Schrader, we both agree on this, is a very dangerous runner. But I'd rather the ball be in his hands. It's just at the point of him having the football in his hands, I want Notre Dame to be able to be efficient with how they attack him, and they limit his impact in that regard.
Yeah, I was getting ready to disagree with you until you said the last part. That's the key. Because if he's got 25 carries in this game, you can lose by 20 because he's going for 115 yards. I think look, Clemson laid out the game plan last week. Yep. Right? They did things in the reads where they took Sean Tucker out of the game. People say, how did Sean Tucker only have 5 carries? Well, part of that is I still think he was not right. But part of it, too, is the way Clemson defended them on a lot of the read stuff, Ryan. They crashed Tucker and made Garrett Schrader keep the ball because they were fast enough a linebacker to chase him down. There were times where he would take off running or he would scramble, and then Barrett Carter or Trenton Simpson would just chase him down. And I think Notre Dame has that kind of athleticism. They're not to Clemson's level. Let me explain. They have the athleticism to catch him, catch Garrett Schrader.
Yep.
So I think your point is spot on. Where if you can be efficient in not letting him get big runs and the big scrambles, keeping him in the pocket, because what Clemson did a good job of last week is they didn't give up a lot of long scrambles. Had a couple early, but especially in the second half, they forced him to be the primary ball carrier, but then they didn't give him anywhere to go when he dropped back to throw. And so what was the stat line last week? Garrett Schrader had his highest number of carries of the season against Clemson last week, but he had his 4th highest yards total. He was 21 carries for 71 yards. Now, part of that's sacks, right? There were some sacks in the game last week, but they really did a good job of not letting him rip off those runs. They didn't let him convert those 3rd and 8 runs. They'd stop him 2-3 yards short of the sticks. So those are keys, right? I think you're spot on. I don't want Sean Tucker carrying the ball 20-plus times because that means you didn't do anything to make them stop giving him the ball, right?
Exactly.
You want to – I think that's a great point. I think it's a great point. As long as you can limit him on the pass game scrambles, that's the thing that concerns me the most. It really is him doing kind of what hurt you early in the year. And then, look, we've been critical of this for years in Notre Dame. I mean, the last – 2 coordinators had that issue. It was an issue for Marcus Freeman's defense at times last year, and it was an issue for Clark Lee's defense. I mean, I still have nightmares of Jawan Pass running all over the Notre Dame defense that started the 2019 season. And we've seen it time and time again. Well, they've actually done a pretty good job of that lately. Now, they've been aided by the fact that last couple quarterbacks they played weren't overly mobile, and Tanner McKee, and then obviously with Doug Brumfield out, they didn't have that same weapon there. And then Harrison Bailey did it late. But they went through a little stretch there. They kept Jaron Hall in check as a runner. Did a really good job with that. They obviously didn't let Tanner McKee take off and scramble. And you say, well, Tanner McKee can't run. Well, Jack Plummer's not exactly a stallion as a runner either. And I thought they did a great job of keeping Drake May in check after the first series. So you look and say, you know what? They started to turn it around. And then, of course, late in the game last week, they let it go. If they can continue that this week, Ryan, then I think I feel good about the opportunities there. I really do.
Yep. And it's going to be a collaborative effort, right? Because it's not just the defensive line. I know we're probably going to talk about it at some point, but the linebackers are paramount in this football game.
Absolutely you need great penetration up front. Your linebackers have to fly the ball and be sound tacklers. And another key to this too, Ryan, is your corners have to be more aggressive coming up than they were the last couple games. They've got to come up and take on blocks aggressively, and they've got to do a better job of getting off blocks. The corners have done a lot of good things this year. That's not one of them. They've been some games they've been good, other games they've been not good. They've got to be on their game this week when it comes to blowing up the perimeter receivers when they try to run their bubbles and their screens and their quick game. And when Garrett Schrader gets on the perimeter, they've got to get off blocks and make tackles, especially on Garrett Schrader. So it's going to be key. And I think the safeties are going to play a big role in that as well. I think there's going to be a lot of alley opportunities for them to come down and make plays, and they've got to make them. Tackling is going to be a big part of this game. That's not one of the keys because it should be assumed, but especially against this kind of team. Fourth key, Ryan, I don't think Notre Dame's offense is good enough to just consistently, methodically move the ball down the field on the Syracuse defense. I don't think the Syracuse offense is good enough to methodically move the ball down the field against Notre Dame. If UNLV doesn't have big plays last week, they score 7 points, and it would have been a garbage touchdown at the end of the game. That's the only drive they put together was that last drive at the end of the game. Their first 2 touchdowns came off of long runs setting it up, right? We've seen this too many times where the opponent gets yards off of a big play sets it up. When Notre Dame limits big plays, they're very hard to score on. That's why Ohio State had a hard time on them. Ohio State had a couple big plays early, and then after that, they had no big plays, and they just weren't good enough to methodically move the ball, consistently move the ball up and down the field. So that's why you held them to 21 points. Marshall wasn't good enough to consistently do that. They won that game because they ripped off a couple long runs that helped them get in opportunities. And of course, there were some blown coverages on third down. And then you get into other games. I mean, what helped BYU? Long punt return, long run that set up a score, right? I mean, teams have not been able to consistently just methodically move the ball on Notre Dame. They've had to rely on big plays. If Notre Dame can limit those big plays, then I think they keep Syracuse's points down. I'm not saying it's going to be like 7 points or 10 points, but they're going to keep it under 30 for sure. And you should, because this is a team that's only gone over 30. They've gone over 33 times in 7 games. Wagner, they scored 59. UConn, they scored 48. And the only other game that they went over 30 was actually, no, I'm sorry. They've gone 4 times. They 31 against Louisville, 32 against Purdue. They had 9 points going into the fourth quarter of that game, 59 against Wagner, and then 48 against UConn. Well, those teams aren't real good on defense, the first 2 teams. UConn's given up 29 points a game. Louisville's given up 20.6, but they've played some kind of not great offenses. I'll say this, Louisville's playing a lot better on defense now than they were at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
Their last 2 weeks, their defense has gotten a lot better. But before that, they got ripped up by Boston College. They got ripped up by Florida State. They got ripped up by Syracuse. So they're playing better now, but they weren't early in the year. So point is, this isn't a team that scores a ton of points. You take away the Wagner game, and they're under 30 on the year. And this is the best defense that I think – this is the most talented defense that they'll face all year. The best defense they've played all year, surprisingly, so far has been Purdue. I've been very impressed by what Purdue has done defensively this year, despite losing Karlaftis. They've been a really stingy defense this year. They're definitely a better rush defense than Notre Dame has been so far this year, although – last week they had a bit of a step back. But again, I still can't believe they lost to Wisconsin last week. But anyway, I don't want to lose track. But anyway, this is definitely the most talented defense they're going to play all year. Notre Dame just has to play clean, Ryan. That's the key. They have to play clean football. If they can play clean football, then I think that they're going to have a shot to keep the points down enough to win this game. That's where I'm at.
So if you start on the Notre Dame side of things, right? Nothing easy. Talked about Syracuse not making things easy for teams, right? No blown coverages in this game, right? No stupid penalties, no missed assignments. Like those things you have control over, right? You have control over those types of things. And if you're Notre Dame, that's paramount. So don't let them get anything easy because Syracuse is the team that isn't built off of creating explosive plays. Like that's not what they do. That's not how they win football games. I mean, 2021 version of Sean Tucker and this offensive line, that was an explosive rushing attack. I feel like every game Sean Tucker was breaking one. This year, it's been much more efficient, and Sean Tucker's been more, downhill, and he's been able to kind of consistently move the chains.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Because I want to ask you a question that I'm going to make a statement, see if you agree with it.
Yep.
Sean Tucker was a more explosive runner last year, but he's been a more efficient runner this year.
Yeah. 100%.
His production's down overall because he hasn't had the big plays, but I think he's been a more efficient runner this year, to your point.
It's been interesting, Brian, because I feel like, and so from an NFL draft circle perspective, right? People were excited about Tucker going into the year, right? And everyone's like, oh, explosive runs and all that good stuff. And I think that he's actually helped his stock this year by being a more efficient downhill runner. I mean, last year he was a, you know, 2, 2, 2, -1, 5, 6, 3, and then you break a 70,
60,
right? Like that's
right?
yeah, exactly. That's different. This year it's more 4, 5, 6, 4, 5,
12,
3, 6,
13,
12, 19.
4,
yeah, like that type of guy, right? And so from an NFL draft perspective, I think that Sean Tucker has kind of been a little bit of a riser despite having less production, which is kind of funny, right? And so I think that that efficiency is definitely there. But to that point, this version of Sean Tucker this year has not been as prone to making big chunk plays as he was last year, at least the home run plays. This passing attack, although improved, has also not been a big play passing attack. Like a Rondé Gatson Jr., or the second, excuse me, is their best weapon in the passing game. He's a really good player. I like him. We've talked about him several times. But he's a 6'5", 219-pound big slot. Like, he's not a burner. He's not going to break one for 60, 70 yards. His chunk plays are 30 yards, right? 35 yards. Like, that's his type of chunk plays. So, again, don't make Syracuse something they're not. They're not an explosive offense. They're a methodical, good, solid offense. Don't let them be an offense where you leave this game and say, wow, I gave up a 70-yard run, gave up a 50-yard pass play, and I really shot myself in the foot with a couple of missed assignments. That cannot be this game because, again, Syracuse, both sides of the football, they are going to be a consistent football team and let teams make mistakes. That's what they do. They don't shoot themselves in the foot. So to reverse that, you can't be a team that shoots yourself in the foot because that offense at Syracuse is not built to score on 1 to 2 play drives, 3 play drives. They are built to score off of 7 play drives, 8 play drives plus. That's their style. Don't let them be something different than what they have been throughout the season. Keep them on schedule at times. And I know people are going to be like, oh, we don't want them to be on schedule. Well, we also don't want them breaking big plays. Like, we do want them to be on schedule. It's just the schedule you want to be less efficient than what it has been. That's the difference. And that is what I think is going to separate this football game if you're able to keep them what they are, but also make them less efficient offensively.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you've nailed them, Ryan. I do. I think we have a good handle on who they are. It's just, you know what they are, but can you stop it? That's the question. And that's what makes this team good. They're not super talented. They have very talented players. They're more top heavy. They're just a really veteran, savvy, well-coached football team that plays hard. You're going to have to earn it. And for the most part, the last year, they've been pretty good at home. They've had some ugly, like they had a bad loss to Rutgers at home last year, bad loss to Pitt. They also have a lot of good wins. They played Clemson really tough at home last year, although they seem to always play them home, play Clemson well. So those are the keys, Ryan. I want to move on to special teams because I do think that special teams keys this week are going to be important. And you know, Ryan, I'm a believer that the key for special teams is do no harm, right? We've talked about this. That's always the number one objective. But I do believe that when you're in this type of environment, you're playing a team like Syracuse, a team that, you know, wants to kind of come out and wants to, you know, get the crowd going early and build early success and jump on Notre Dame and all those type of things. And you're facing a loud ruckus crowd and all that type of stuff. One of the things that you can do to really help your football team is to generate big, like, momentum changing plays. And to me, that's what I think the special teams can do this week. Now, we talk a lot about Notre Dame on defense or offense. You got to know what the teams are going to be prepared for and be ready to handle it. Notre Dame has blocked 3 kicks in their last 2 games, right? You've blocked 4 kicks on the year. It's a lot. That's tied for 3rd in the country. There's 2 teams tied for 1st. They're tied for 3rd. You know that Syracuse is going to have a plan for that. So what is your kind of counter to that? You know, do you bring your pressures from somewhere else? Do you know that they're going to try to protect right up the middle because that's where things came from last week? And so maybe you try to sneak something off the edge. But either way, I would heat them up again because I feel this is the kind of game where, because of what you've done in recent games, punters can get a little bit jumpy sometimes, right? And especially if you had a couple balls kicked. this is maybe that game where you can kind of say, hey, look, you've got a freshman punter, right? You got a first-year punter. He's having a nice year, 42.5 punts per game. Hasn't had any blocks so far. I'm going after him. He's going to watch that film and see that they blocked 2 kicks last week. They've blocked 3 kicks recently, all punts. So I'm going to say, hey, I'm a little nervous. So maybe he rushes it a little bit. Maybe he line drives a couple. I think this is a game where you're going to need to get some of those opportunities to really have some success, Ryan, with some kind of game-changing plays. I think if they can do that, then I think this team has a chance to be pretty good. Here's the other interesting thing. Syracuse has kicked off 47 times this year. Only 28 of them have been touchbacks. That's a pretty low number. Teams don't let you return kicks a lot anymore. This is a game where hopefully that you can kind of have some success this week getting a return going. Syracuse ranks 94th in the country in kick return coverage defense. I want to see them take advantage of that. I want to see Notre Dame, a team that doesn't kick the ball in the end zone only about little over half the time, have returns set up. This is the game that you really focus on during a week of practice to have returns set up, because this is a game where maybe you can steal field position with a big return. I would absolutely be ready for that. Those two things to me, be aggressive going after the punter to maybe help you win some field position battles, and then work this week hard on your returns and get that going. I think those are 2 keys where if they can catch a play here, catch a play there, you could really have a momentum-changing play. I mean, think about the Wisconsin game last year. Wisconsin had taken all the momentum back. Notre Dame had a lead. They sacked Drew Pine. He fumbles. They go down. They score, kick a field goal early in the fourth quarter. The minute Chris Tyree broke through that final line, you're like, and you knew he was gone, just sapped the energy out of that, and Wisconsin never recovered.
Yep.
That's what that kind of play can do. You know, they go down, score on the Notre Dame defense, and bam, you take one back to the house, and all the momentum is gone. This is a week where more than most weeks, I would really be amped up and ready to go, trying to get a return in this game. Absolutely.
Well, first and foremost, from the special team perspective for Notre Dame, right? Been excellent this year. They have been. I mean, you mentioned the block kicks. You can mention Blake Grupe's been pretty good as a field goal kicker. He's been pretty consistent. The punting's been really good. The punt return game has been good. The one part of it, though, Brian, that hasn't been great is Notre Dame's kickoff return unit has not been great this year. So, again,
a lot of chances. Yeah,
exactly. You're going to have opportunities this week, which is huge for them. And Syracuse is also a team that pretty consistently has been a pretty good special teams group. I mean, you think of they've had Sterling Hoffrichter, who got drafted to the NFL. Andre Schmidt has been there for 17 years as their kicker, is a good kicker, obviously. So I think that they have a big opportunity in what seems on paper to be a good matchup between 2 good special teams units. The one area where Notre Dame has not had a big impact to this point, kick return, is an opportunity to kind of right that ship a little bit, reverse that momentum. Because we've been frustrated with the usage of Chris Tyree as an offensive player, right? So maybe he makes his impact as a special teamer this week a little bit, which would be nice to see. So, and I think that this is a separating factor too, in the fact of this should be a competitive football game, most likely, right? There's a world where Notre Dame can run away with it because they have that type of talent. But I think the most likely outcome is that you are a talented football team against a team that's playing very good football. And this will probably be most of the game, kind of maybe a back and forth game, or at least a close football game. That's most likely outcome. And when you have that, what's separating factors? I think a separating factor could be who's the best special teams on the day, who doesn't miss a field goal, who doesn't get a punt blocked, who has better field position throughout the entirety of the football game. Those things, I think, are what I would call the separating factors in a football game. And Notre Dame has been good on that side of the ball so far this year. They need to keep it rolling, obviously, in this big game for them. Big game on Saturday.
That's going to do it for our keys to victory. We'll have a mailbag coming up next. But before we do go to the mailbag, I do want to wish a very, very happy birthday to that guy right there. Ryan Roberts turns 22 today. Wait a minute. What is it, Ryan? 31 today?
31
so
today.
Ryan is 31 today. Looks like he's 22. He's aged quite well. So I want to wish him a very happy birthday, in his first year here with Irish Breakdown. So we love having you on board, and you're doing a great job. So, and as Tom Spagnola says it, love you, Ryan. So Tom nailed it. So, we're going to move to the mailbag next, but first, before we go, folks, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast. Of course, sign up for the message boards at irishbreakdown.com. I'm going to have a recruiting intel update a little bit later tonight, and then we're going to continue, obviously, putting all of our content, great conversation, and great discussion on there as well. It's mailbag time, so let's dive into some questions. We have some start already. We're going to go through and find some more. If you do have questions you want us to get to, please go ahead and throw those in there now, and we will get to them. But we have several super chats here. We have one from Patrick Quinlan, who, happy birthday, Ryan. First beer is on me. So there you go, Ryan. Christopher Morgan has a couple super chats, 3 super chats actually here. First one, thank you, Christopher, very, very much. Off topic, I'm taking a longtime friend to her first Notre Dame home game November 5th. I told her this game could go either way, but I want her to feel the experience of diehard Indy fans and why go crazy in game. So I guess my question is, will you guys have a tailgate November 5th so I could possibly introduce her to you guys so she could see I'm not just a crazy Notre Dame fan and flip her to Notre Dame fans? And if you have a tailgate, and this is the last super chat, thank you, Chris. If you have a tailgate, will you have merch on site so I can buy her some IB stuff? My goal is to have her join and sub to follow Notre Dame on this great site. So first of all, good luck. I see. I like what you're trying to do there. I like your friend. That's good. But we will have the plan now is to have a tailgate on November 5th. So, barring family issues coming up, my parents plan on coming to town that weekend, and whenever they're in town, they like to tailgate. So, what I don't know is if I'm going to have my mom cook. I'm trying to convince her to just let me buy food that she can then work on setting up because I want her to just kind of relax. But she keeps telling me, but I love to cook. I love to do stuff. And she does. She caters almost every wedding in our family because she's a really good cook. So we'll see. But we are going to have a tailgate. We will get together on that day. It'll be a lot more. I mean, it's a night game, so I have a lot more time to kind of hang out than the 2:30 kickoff for the last time we had a tailgate, which was still a ton of fun. So, yes, we will have a November 5th tailgate at Notre Dame. Where it will be, not sure yet. It's always up to kind of where the parking is. But, yes, we will have a tailgate that day. I will not have merch on site. I'm going to kind of next year, I think I'm going to think about this because it's an interesting idea. The problem is all the merch has to kind of be bought from vendors. We go through Printful. So it's a print on demand company. So I will not have merch, but we'll be rocking merch. There will be people there will be rocking merch. You can kind of show it off to them, be like, hey, I want one of those. And then maybe you can go get it to or get it for, and then it comes and then, deliver it and you can give it to her as a present. So we'll hook it up that way. But we will not have merch on site. But that's something to consider moving forward is maybe having some hats and, maybe a few shirts at these if people want to buy. So, or maybe have some fun. Like if somebody signs up, or something that day, who knows? We'll have some fun with it. But no, we won't have it this time, Christopher. But we will be there, so you can meet us. You meet me. I'll be there. I don't know about the rest of the staff. I'll have to talk to those guys about it. But I'll be there. My parents will be there, and so it'll be a lot of fun. So I look forward to it very much. Let's get to some questions here, Ryan. Ryan Schulte. Morning. Getting this question in early. Can't stay for the whole live show. What specific route concepts would you attack Syracuse secondary in both 21 and 12 personnel groups? Thanks, fellas. Ryan, you want to take first crack at this?
Yeah, I think that we talked about one earlier in the week, Brian, is I think levels, working, make some flood to the field, right? Like there's situations because what Syracuse's corners are really good at is they're off man corners, right? Like they play some press, but like for the most part, they're playing off man.
I won't be shocked if they play more press this game though, just based off what they've seen on film against Notre Dame every single game so far this year. Wouldn't shock me.
You could be very well correct, but based on film, what they are right now is they are an off-man team that is very good clicking and closing, working downhill, and they don't let anything behind you. So to occupy that type of concept, right? I want to get some high-low action on them. I want to get a flat threat. I want to get somebody working behind them. I want to get a vertical. Like I want those things to be implemented in the playbook this week because for a good corner like a Garrett Williams or a Deuce Chestnut, they're most of the time going to be in the proper spots. I want to make them guess wrong then, right? Like I want there to be options of different spots that I can attack on a defense. So that would be one. And then, another big thing is, you're talking about especially out of 12 personnel, Brian, like we've talked about this a ton, right? How about a little Michael Mayer down the seam and the other tight end kind of working it in a trail, working down the middle of the field because that Syracuse is going to play some too high in this football game, whether it's working cover 2, cover 4, or 2-man. So let's occupy one of the safeties on the front side and then bring a tight end underneath on a trail, whether that is Mayer or whether that is Mitchell Evans or Holden Stace or whoever, to get that middle of the field open, because there's going to be opportunities for that if you occupy those safeties on the hash to attack the middle of the field in their too high coverages. So there will be a couple things. So levels, some occupying guys down the seam, working some under routes, that type of thing. I think my thing is that I want there to be options, high-lowing defensive backs in this matchup.
I agree with a lot of that. Some of that stuff we talked about this week too, Ryan. Obviously, we discussed, getting some the flood concepts. We said there are definitely some field concepts to that you can utilize this week. We saw Purdue with that. Now, can Drew Pine make those throws? We'll see. I do also think that we haven't seen Notre Dame run a lot of smash this year. And that's been a concept that they like to use a lot in the past. And part of the thing is they haven't faced a lot of cover 2 this year. And smash is a great cover 2 concept, cover 2, cover 4 concept. But the problem is teams have been playing ways that I think limit just their effectiveness running that concept. And it's something they ran a lot last year. Syracuse, based on what they've shown, Ryan, is going to run a lot of cover 2 into the boundary, a lot. This is a game where you can get Michael Mayer isolated on some smash concepts, where you can maybe get a Mitchell Evans or even a Tobias Merriweather isolated on some of those concepts where you can have some success. I also think because of the way they play cover 2, I think there's some backside over stuff that you can do from a trips field, bringing it back to the sideline where you can kind of, run a smash concept, right? Maybe you utilize a back, use your receiver. Look, here's the thought, right? Like, so you reduce your W, right? Bring him down a little bit, maybe like 5 yards off the tackle. Run him on a corner route and have your back run like a slide or a wide hitch to occupy the corner. And then you've got, because that linebacker is going to run with Michael Mayer or the receiver trying to ride him upfield, because, and then the safety's over top. And then you can bring some levels backside, so smash into the boundary with a kind of a cross and an in, or in and an under, things like that, or just an over, where you can bring some stuff from a trip side out of that. Then you can just run some basic smash stuff out of your 2x2. I think especially out of 12 personnel, I really like the idea of running smash this week out of 12 personnel with both your tight ends at the boundary. Just have your one tight end kind of run like a wide stop or a wide hitch, have your normal tight end run an isolation corner route against their safeties. I like that matchup. Just tell Drew, dude, put it up high. Their corners their safeties are not good enough to beat Michael Mayer, or especially Mitchell Evans. That's who I would keep an eye on, because he's about an inch taller than Michael Mayer. He's got really long arms. Maybe you give him a shot, because if Syracuse in there like, holy crap, Mitchell Evans just beat us for a 30-yard pass. This is not good.
No.
I think there's some things there where they could have some success. I think there's some things that you can do with your running backs out of 12 personnel, kind of running them off and then bringing some underneath routes. Because if you're 12 personnel on the boundary, they'll have their corner and their safety there, but their linebackers to that side are also going to be keying on those vertical releases. You can get your running backs in some isolations as well with those concepts. Obviously, the RPO stuff, the bubbles, I would like to see some things like that, where you can be effective. If you can pick some tendencies of how they are in their inside blitzes, maybe an inside screen or something like that. 21 personnel is where I really want to see Notre Dame have some fun this week throwing the football. And we talked about levels. I kind of look at it, what I'm talking about is not so much levels, Ryan, but layers. And that's two different things for me. Levels is 3 guys kind of working together on a vertical stretch, high-low or low-high vertical stretch. Levels to me is that, and that's great stuff. We talk a lot about that. Layers is something that I look at where it's accomplishing the same thing, but it's done in different waves. And you see a lot of teams do this where, you kind of have like a vertical route, and then you kind of bring like a guy on like a follow, so you run a wide fade and that takes them out, but then you kind of bring a back or an inside guy that kind of delays and then kind of works out late, because what Syracuse will do is if you show a drop back vertical pass, they will bail. They will jump underneath it hard. And so I think if you're willing to be patient, there's some stuff with your backs on, 1st and 10 from some of your spread stuff. They won't do it as much out of 21 and 12, but out of 21, if you go wide, if you put Chris Tyree out wide, or maybe you can run some screen stuff to him. But then also with Logan Diggs, I would go 21 this week a lot with Logan Diggs and Chris Tyree. and you have Chris Tyree outside where you can, like I said, run him a hitch, run him on an under, run him on some screen stuff, right? But then as you drop back and let them get vertical, you got Logan Diggs there to pick up any blitzing. But if they're not blitzing, then what I would do is I'd leak him out and almost kind of have Drew, you got one read. You're reading this high-low right here, and if it's not there, come back late to Logan because there will be room to catch and run on checkdowns this week. So that's another area where you can steal some yards against them. So I actually think there's a lot that they can do this game. And then we've seen them do something else. Out of 12 personnel, the way that they defend 12 personnel, Ryan, especially if a team is a run-heavy 12 personnel team, there's going to be a lot of one-on-one opportunities to the field out of twins. So if you put your 2 tight ends in the back, there's going to be some one-on-ones. Or if you just go 2 by 2 to spread them out a little bit more, there's some opportunities there to have and here's one, 22 personnel. Put 2 tight ends boundary, put Chris Tyree in the slot to the field because they're going to adjust personnel-wise and go with the bigger personnel. Maybe run some bubbles and some things. But the point is there's some one-on-one opportunities to the field. And I think, Ryan, if you can get them in single high or man looks, you've got to be willing to take some shots down the field. And you've got to be I personally would put Tobias and Deion Colsey in those situations. And I'm talking field shots. It's a little tougher to take boundary shots because the way they play cover 2. But if you get them in a single high where they're starting to bring the safety down, I'd go that route. So I think that too. Sometimes stop with the scheme, put Tobias on whoever they have, drop back, tell Drew, hit your 3 and let her rip. Throw it as far as you can, right? Let him run underneath it or let him go make a play on it. And that's another thing that I would do in this look.
Love it.
So
Love it.
All types of different things. There's a lot of opportunities. It's just about what are you comfortable with and what's Drew most comfortable with is really what it comes down to. We got some more super chats here from Zach Martin. In my opinion, Notre Dame should run the veer with DJ. Just trying to start some problems. There, Ryan. Christopher Morgan. Thank you for the super chat, Zach. Christopher Morgan with another super chat. Hey, happy birthday, Ryan. Here is a beer on me. It's an expensive beer. Thank you for the super chat, man.
Yeah, that's a high-priced beer. That's quality beer right there.
Tyler Evans with a super chat. Would you have a quarterback spy for the – would you have a – I think he meant would you have a quarterback spy for the Syracuse quarterback? We talked about that a little bit earlier, Ryan. I would in drop 8.
In spots,
but
not
not as my main game plan, no.
No. And we talked about it before. I mean, Tyler, I am all for a spy in certain situations, big moments in the football game for sure if it's killing you, right? But I mean, I am much more, hey, defensive line wise and linebacker, let's stick to our keys, man, and let's make some plays, and that'll kind of take care of itself, right? Like I think that spy, some people rely too much on spies at time, and then that's taking a player away from your secondary, right? That's taking one less coverage guy. I want to try to confuse Garrett Schrader a little bit, get him in obviously pass situations, but I want him to I want Notre Dame's defensive line to maintain good gap integrity where he doesn't have a free lane, where he doesn't have that type of thing. And honestly, there's other ways to work spy, so schematically what a spy is, right? You talk about a linebacker that is just his priority is that quarterback, wherever he goes, you are just maintaining your leverage on him. Your eyes are to him all the time. Well, if I run some zone defense at times, right, too, where my eyes are back to the quarterback, you become a de facto spy regardless. So I think that people overuse the spy thing a little bit too much. Maintain gap integrity, be good on the second level, play good defense, and I think that you will eliminate a lot of what makes Garrett Schrader special. So At times, sure, that won't be my main game plan. Not at all.
Notre Dame 2164. I understand sitting estimate down for the rest of the UNLV game to send a message, but I hope they give him another chance this week. I agree, especially against an undersized defense, Ryan. I mean, this is a game where estimate could have some success. He needs to sit, right? He needed to sit against UNLV. He needs to kind of have that, dude, you've got to do a better job protecting the football. You got to get that sucker tucked. You can't you can't have it here but away from your body. You got to really keep that thing tight in traffic. He's too good, though, to just write off. Now, if he has another one, you get to the point where it's like, okay, it's the point of diminishing returns, but I'm not ready to sit him completely. No, not at all.
Especially with his talent level, and he's only a sophomore, right?
Yes.
Like if this was a senior where it was just like a consistent issue, I'd be like, all right, man, like this is just not going to happen. But to your point, he's a talented young back. He needs to
Right.
play. He needs to play.
Yeah.
And I had no issue with him being sat for the rest of the football
Right.
game. My issue after and I remember we talked a little bit about this on the post-game show, was I hoped, and this is my worst fear, is that they're like, well, Audric, we're done with you for the rest of the year, man. Like, we can't trust you. And that, I think, would be a very flawed idea, right? Because I think, again, long-term, Audric Estime needs to be and can be a dude for you. That's what he can be. And I don't think you can give up on him yet. You can't.
Absolutely. And especially this game, because if you're able to keep this thing close and use him as the hammer in the fourth quarter the way you have, that's when you can really put this thing away. Because if you're able to lean on them the first 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden you start hammering them in the fourth quarter with him and Diggs, 215 and 230, you're going to have some success there, man. There's no doubt about it. Next question from DMND13. What do you think is more likely Saturday, a point total over 59.5 or a point total under 37.5? So Ryan will be able to answer this when he gets back from fixing his flag, which came off. What is more likely on Saturday? I would probably go under on that, just because I have a hard time seeing these two teams averaging 30 points. I honestly don't think Syracuse is – let me look at this. Other than the UConn game, I can't think of another game where Syracuse has been in the combined point total, because, you had 62 against UConn, 48 against Louisville, 51 at 61. Okay, the Virginia game was there, but that was – I think that game went to overtime, or it was late. They had a kicked field goal late. Virginia was 42. Wagner was 59. That was even under. 33 for NC State and 48 for Clemson. So they haven't played in a lot of games this year. When you combine that with how bad Notre Dame's offense has been for most of the year, I wouldn't take the over on that. If I was betting, I wouldn't take the over. I think the under, I could certainly see a 20-17 game. Certainly could see that. Yeah, certainly could see that. Yeah. These are two good defensive football teams against two not really explosive, high-scoring offensive football teams. I could absolutely see that. Would I predict 20-17? No, probably not. But it's not far off from what my prediction is going to be tomorrow. I'll just say that. Timeout Tom asks, if there was one thing I thought Notre Dame wouldn't have a problem with this season was being emotionally ready to play, why do you think that hasn't been the case?
Good point.
I actually don't think that's been an issue until Stanford. It wasn't that long ago we were talking about, I think, going into BYU and actually going into the Stanford game. What we had said was, outside of a little bit against Marshall because of the OSU hangover, the one thing about this team is they were emotionally ready to play. They were emotionally ready to play against Cal. They were emotionally ready to play against North Carolina and BYU. It just like something clicked happened against Stanford. I think maybe they overlooked Stanford. I don't know what the case was. And then I think that loss sent them into a funk last week. So up until the Stanford game, I really don't think that was an issue, to be honest with you. Why has it been an issue the last couple games? That I don't have an answer to. I wonder if part of it, some guys maybe just checked out. Maybe there's a lack of confidence that I'm not being put in position to be successful. You've had a lot of things going against you. You lost to Stanford. Jacob Lacey leaves. There's just been a lot of behind the scenes turmoil going on with certain kids and players and things like that. So I think that factors into it, Ryan, is potential issues. But to say what it is, I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't tell you exactly what it is.
It could be a flurry of different things. I mean, like you said, it could be just some players they're just not there mentally right now, right? They're just like, nope, this isn't rolling. And anytime you lose a couple football games that you shouldn't, that kind of puts you into a little bit of a funk. I mean, I'm interested though to see this game again. You're going to Syracuse. You're gonna be in front of a pretty good crowd. You're gonna be playing the number 16 team in the country. If energy is an issue this week, then I start to get my red flag out. Like that's
I'm taking that red flag and I'm chucking it onto the field, man. There's no doubt.
That's not great, because like you can somewhat forgive. It shouldn't happen, but you can somewhat forgive it against UNLV because you could walk into there and you're just.
It shouldn't happen, right? But these are college kids. They watch film. They know this team's not nearly as good as they are. And it was, and honestly, the defense didn't play like a team that was uninspired. They just kind of went through the motions in pregame, and they didn't come out of the tunnel super fired up. But the defense at least came out and executed. I mean, both teams executed pretty well early outside of one play. by the defense. First drive Notre Dame came out. Yeah, they weren't fired up and emotionally fired up, but you know what? They went right down the field and scored. Yep. Defensively, they came out and overwhelmed UNLV early. So, yeah, but to Ryan's point, against a team like that, I get it. They watch film. I mean, that's the reason Lou Holtz was so hard on his players when they were playing bad teams. I mean, they would talk about this. We hated Navy week because remember back then Navy wasn't very good. We hated playing Rice because we knew that week, man, coach was going to be all over us. Why did he do that? Because he knew they're not going to get up for this game by themselves. And I say, well, kids should always. There's a difference between loving playing college football and being emotionally at your peak, getting ready to play a team that you're way better than. Right. And I think that partly explains the Stanford game too, because I don't think this team has necessarily the leadership or the maturity to say, yeah, this team's not good, but we still got to handle our business. And I think that's kind of part of the issue against Stanford as well. Irish Blooded says, question about Dino Babers. Do you think they are overachieving this year, or do you guys think Dino has been an underrated coach and needing to turn the corner the last couple of years? I don't think Dino's an underrated coach because Syracuse has underachieved in recent seasons. I don't think they've played to their team's potential by at least a couple games a year. Like, for example, last year, that team had no business losing at home to Rutgers. None.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
It was a bad loss. How does a team go toe-to-toe with Clemson, go toe-to-toe with Wake Forest, beat Virginia Tech, do all that, beat Liberty, who's a good team last year, give Florida State a game on the road, losing by 3, and then lose at home to Rutgers? That you beat Rutgers at home, you're in a bowl game last year. I think he's underachieved. What I think this year is I think they're playing to their potential. We said it before the year. Ryan and I both said before the season, this has a chance to be the best secondary Notre Dame is going to face this year. And as it's played out, it's not even a chance. They are.
They are.
Yeah. I had Michael Jones on my preseason all-opponent team. And not that Ryan didn't agree with it, but there was just another guy. He had a different guy, but it wasn't like, whoa, no way. It was like, yeah, I see it. I get it. Right. So we thought and Ryan talked about Deuce Chestnut this summer when we were talking about that, how he's an underrated guy on their defense. And then, of course, Sean Tucker was, it was a battle between him and Travion Henderson on who we were going to put on the all-opponent first team there. So Matthew Bergeron, the left tackle, was on both of our first team, all-opponent team squad. So I think this year what's happening is, and Garrett Schrader was a 4-star top 300 recruit coming out of high school. I think what they're doing this year is this staff has done a good job of finally getting this team to play to their potential. So I don't think they're overachieving as much as they're not underachieving like they have in the past. Now, look, Syracuse still has a lot to prove, Ryan.
Yeah.
Because I would argue that there's been only one team that they've played so far that could match them talent-wise, and that's Clemson, who surpassed them, and they beat them. Purdue and Syracuse are similar talent-wise, and it was a battle, and Syracuse won. But they've got Notre Dame this week, at Pitt, home against Florida State, at Wake Forest, at Boston College. There's a lot of winnable games there for them. There's a lot of losable games there for them too. Yep. So I still need to see them finish before I'm ready to completely say, hey, great job, Coach Babers. So, people say, oh, maybe he should be up for the Coach of the Year if they can beat Notre Dame and go on a roll. Maybe, but I think it'll look on paper, oh, great job turning this program around. But I think they did a poor job with past teams, in my opinion. And so I put it more on that, Ryan. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I don't disagree. I also do think that this year stars have aligned a little bit in the sense that they made a really good hire with their offensive coordinator, right? And I think that Dino took a step back and said, like, hey, I need a different opinion offensively. And they have worked a little bit of a different conceptual approach on the offensive side of the football. And also, Brian, I think that a big reason is some of their best football players are now seasoned vets, right? Like Garrett Williams is a redshirt junior. Sean Tucker is a true junior. Matthew Bergeron is a junior. Like
redshirt junior, right? Or
redshirt junior, yeah. Junior or redshirt junior, either way.
Yeah. He's in his fourth year.
Is he in his fourth year? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those guys that had been a part of some struggles early on are now veterans, right? Like, so I think a couple things have aligned, but to your point, I don't disagree. I think that they have underachieved the last couple of years, but I think hats off to Dino Babers in one instance of understanding, like, hey, I need somebody else in here to help with this offense because it's struggling right now to be different than what I've done. And then defensively, I think, again, the stars have kind of aligned because all your dudes on defense right now are now upperclassmen, juniors, seniors. Like that's happened.
And Tommy Reese talked about this too this week, and it was a good observation by him. You could kind of see it in 2020. They played a lot of young guys in 2020, and it was the first year into the new defensive coordinator. And at times you could say, oh, you know what, this team might have a chance. There were times in 2020 where you say, when these kids get to their junior year, insert, positive prognostication. And so it's kind of like what Marcus Freeman did with a lot of those kids at Cincinnati. They came in, they had these really young kids. They had their struggles in year one, but by year 2, year 3, those young kids had been in his system a few years, and all of a sudden, wow, Cincinnati goes from a below average defense in his first year to a lights out defense that kept Georgia's run game in check in his third year. Similar situation here with what they've done with their D coordinators. He's been coaching these kids now for 3 years. Michael Jones is a 3-year starter. Garrett Williams is a 3-year starter. These guys have been playing a lot of football, and they've got things figured out. They're playing with confidence, and they're winning football games. So Notre Dame needs to sap that early, So, that's a really, really good observation there. All right, next question from Keith Wiegand. Guys, any thoughts on Notre Dame offering 2023 quarterback Rock Chalesky? So a little background there. Notre Dame offered him about 2 weeks ago, Ryan, as a football and baseball player. Did some research on Rock, and there's definitely interest on both sides. However, he's projected by many to be a first-round Major League Baseball pick. Now, the interesting thing is he's really a first-year starter at Hamilton. He played some as a junior, but he's really a first-year starter. So he's under the radar in that regard. But it's the baseball thing that's really the big thing. This kid is athletic, and he has a cannon for an arm. But he's also a shortstop, a really good shortstop. And I've seen him. He's in the top, almost a consensus top 20 pick or top 20 ranked high school baseball player looking at the draft. So there's a good chance he's going to be a first-round draft pick, which would make it a little bit challenging for him to do both. But we've seen it before. Russell Wilson was technically a walk-on at NC State. Ricky Williams was, I believe, technically a walk-on at Texas because he played Major League Baseball as well. So we've seen it. I know that Notre Dame has interest in him. They have interest in him, doing both at Notre Dame. I doubt that he does that, Ryan. I think if he's going to if he's going to go to college, I think it'll probably be more he plays pro baseball in the summer and then plays football in the fall when baseball season is over, most likely. Or he just plays baseball, right? But very talented kid. It's just a little early. It's a little early there, but there's definitely some interest there. And we'll have some backstory on that one here as we get closer to signing day on why Notre Dame is involved in this one a little bit more. So, and QB update or QB recruiting will be part of the update that I put up later today. For the intel piece on the boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So sign up. Also, I should probably throw out a reminder to people. So I sent an email out about it today. I'm going to actually send a follow-up email later because I'm going to actually move the date up. We're actually going to cancel our PayPal account on November 1st. Now we've removed PayPal from being an option for new signups, but if you're already signed up, we're going to cancel our account. So if your monthly membership, when it goes to renew in November, it will not auto renew. You're going to have to change your payment format. If you're an annual member, it's not something to worry about right now unless it runs out in November. So obviously you'll need to change that. It's an easy process. If you have any questions about it, please email me at brian@irishbreakdown.com. But we're going to disassociate with PayPal, and I've been meaning to say that. And just thought of that when I was talking about signing up for the boards. If you haven't signed up yet and you're going to sign up now, it doesn't matter because it's not an option, so you don't have to worry about it. You just have the one option. But if you have signed up with PayPal in the past, you'll have gotten an email from me about it. I'm actually going to move the date up. I said December 1st in the email. I'm going to actually move it up to November 1st. So just to give everybody a heads up on that. James Brothers says, I think Lindsey is still having problems with his hamstring. I will say this, Ryan. Number one, I don't agree. If he is, good Lord, how open would he be every game if he had a healthy hamstring? Now, I don't see issues.
He's going to run 4.3 at the combine if he's got a hamstring issue right now. I mean, because he's leaving some dudes in the dust.
He's open every single game. This is what fans. If you're at I've had people this year who have reached out to me. He's like, dude, I didn't believe you when you were talking about Lindsey always being open until I went to whatever game, and I saw it. He's open all the time, and and they say, well, when they throw him the ball, he's not open. Yeah, that's the problem, right? I mean, that's the issue, right? I mean, he should have had 3 catches for 140 yards against Marshall, Ryan.
Yep.
Next question from actually, we have a question from Jessica Schmidt. Jessica asks, do you think Luafau will be used in a similar way as to how he was used against North Carolina this week? I think, yeah. I would, because he was aggressive. They triggered him a lot, run first and second down. He was a pass rusher on third down. I think that played a role in their ability to keep Drake May sort of contained in that game, was having him. And then that allowed them to have some success on the edge because you couldn't fan out to Foskey because you had to deal with Maris Luafau coming up the middle. So I personally would do similar things this week, Ryan.
I think that this is a very important game for Maris Luafau, Brian, because, I mean, for the most part, throughout the season, he's been very underwhelming, and we've highlighted that plenty of times. Had a pretty decent showing against North Carolina, and I actually thought last week was maybe his best game of the season so far, in my opinion. Again, it's against UNLV, so he has to do it against a better team.
Well, but see, let me just interrupt you there for a second, Ryan, because the issues with Maris haven't been, bad teams or good teams are overwhelming him. It's, dude, what are you doing? Why are you Why are you not assignment correct here? Why are you not where you need to be? So I think the fact is that
it's not a physical thing; it's a mental thing. Right?
But against UNLV, the reason he was effective is because he was outside of, I would say, one play. The option, I'm not even like, were they even prepared for that? Was he actually supposed to take? I don't know enough about the call there to say he screwed up. That's my point.
Even if he attacks the quarterback on that play, Brian, that pitch is
he's walking
score.
in.
Like he's
and if he takes the pitch out, the quarterback walks in. Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if they were prepared, and I don't know the call, so I'm not faulting him for that. However, he had a bad run fit on the 70-yard run. Outside of that, he was where he needed to be, and he did it aggressively and physically. So yes, I understand what you're saying about you don't want to get too hyped up about UNLV. But it wasn't so much that he dominated physically. It's that he was where he was supposed to be. And that to me is something that's you doing your job is independent of the quality of your opposition.
Yep.
Right? Now, how well you do your job can be impacted by the quality of the opposition.
Yeah. That was maybe the first game this season where I actually thought Maris, even in his bad plays, was in the right spot, like consistently. There wasn't really a play that I was like, wow, dude, like why are you there right now? Like, I don't understand what your thought process is of why you are there. I don't get it. Like, he was pretty clean as far as where he was supposed to be on the football field. Bad fit, sure. But, I mean, he's fitting the right gap. It's just he's taking the block on incorrectly, right? Like, that's the kind of the frustrating thing about it. But I think it's a big game for Maris, though, because you played pretty well last week. You played good, I would say. Can you stack games now, right? That's where confidence builds. Can you have 2 good games in a row where now you're going into Clemson and, hey, if you have another good game against Clemson, now maybe you start seeing the Maris that we expected to see. Or does he have a bad game and then it's just kind of like super inconsistent and you're just kind of throwing it out again? Like this is a big game, I think, for Maris Luafau. I think it is, especially against an athletic quarterback like this. Like he could be a weapon if he is in the right spot and he's doing what he needs to do. Because athletically, there's never been any question about Maris Luafau. He's a very talented kid.
Right. He's a very, very athletic kid for sure. He's just now got to turn that into being a good football player. Absolutely right, Ryan. Then there's a question here from Irish Mills. Brian, if you were Marcus Freeman or Tommy Rees or Al Golden, if you had control of the team, what is one thing you would change right away, both offensively and defensively? Okay, I'm going to kind of cheat. I'm going to kind of do 2 things that kind of go together, and I think this will make sense right on offense. Defensively, it's simple. Literally and figuratively. Offensively, I think if I could just make one change, and again, I can only make one, I'm going to tie 2 things together and make it one because I can. And that is I'm going to mix up the run game inside and out more. So I'm going to add more outside zone, and I'm going to add a buck sweep to the concepts, right? Now, I would still use in more inside zone, but hey, if you're dead set on duo, fine. But just add the buck sweep, add the outside zone stuff to it. And then I would tag RPOs with a lot of that stuff.
That's mine.
So that kind of goes together, right? It kind of goes together a little bit for me. Defensively, it's just simplify. Let your dudes be dudes. Literally, I don't care if it's Clemson or USC. You got to let your dudes be dudes. Right now, there are some matchups that USC has a better player than what Notre Dame will have on the other side of the field. I would argue, however, that against Clemson and USC, that on defense, Notre Dame will have a better player across from a guy for USC and Clemson. They will have more my dudes better than your dudes matchups against both of those offenses because of what you have at defensive line wise, right? And so let your dudes be dudes. Stop trying to out-scheme everybody and their mother, right? Come up with some cool stuff, have some fun blitzes and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. But make sure that nothing you do keeps these kids from playing fast. So I'd scale things back. Now, I'm not saying you just line up in the same defense every play, but you know what? Clark Lee kind of came close to that. And, their defense was pretty good, right? So just find that happy medium. I don't believe in that, but I also don't believe in over complexity. Scale things back a little bit, figure out what your guys are really good at, and make sure you're majoring in that. And then minor in the other stuff, minor in the blitzes, minor in the coverage looks and all that kind of stuff. But find out what your guys are really, really good at and major in that stuff. Those are the two things, Ryan, that I would do. What about you?
RPO is my one on offense, which is the easy one for me. I just think that it makes so much sense, Brian, especially with a team that has been running the football at a pretty healthy clip recently. Like Notre Dame's been a good rushing team. And the quarterback that you have, I think that, Drew Pine is made, in my opinion, to be an RPO quarterback. Like he has the traits that you would want that to best accentuate his strengths, I feel like, is to be a quick decision maker. And that gives you that parameter to be that type of offense. So RPO is number one for me. Like there'll be so many more tags off of the run game than what I have right now. I also agree with diversity, but I am not going to cheat like you just cheated. I'm only going to pick one thing. So I'm going to go with RPO.
Well, they go together. Because you're tagging them with the runs. They go together.
Yeah,
I get it. You can't have one without the other. But I can. I'm allowed to do that. So, I'm going to get away with it and do it when I can. So, now I thought Jessica Schmidt kind of nailed it, Ryan. She had something in there also that. So if I'm going to do my thing, here's what we'll do. I'll add one thing. So I'm Marcus Freeman. You're Tommy Reese. I'll add diversity in the run game. You add RPO. So then we've added the other thing. We're going to let Jessica add something else in there, and that is go up tempo. Now, what I would say is I don't know if Notre Dame needs to go up tempo, but I think they need to go with more tempo is what I would say. And that's something that I would like to see. She says defensively not using safety blitzes on third long when your safety comes from 12-plus yards per each. So
we haven't seen it recently with the safety blitzes, so let's hope that
we saw it against Stanford. We saw it against Stanford, and they banged a post route right behind it. Just do a post right behind it. Easy.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, I'm trying to block that game out of my mind. Yeah, Josh H91. Brian, is a former OC. Is there any value to having Mayer sit out for a few team sessions during practice to help Pine learn to go to other options? My initial reaction to this, Ryan, was no, because I'm not punishing Mayer because Pine's looking for him. But as I thought about it, I said, I actually think there is some value to it for two reasons. Number one is this one, but primarily, I think it also gives me a chance to rest Michael Mayer because he has taken a beating this year because of how of the way that teams have thrown at him. Giving him some reps off to let Mitchell Evans get more work as the one, to let Stace and Kane Barong get more work as the 2 and the 3. I think there's value to that. So you're getting close to November now. Give Michael Mayer some series off in team. Now, you still need to have him out there at times, but maybe you cut his reps in half in some of those periods, especially maybe 7-on-7. I don't know if I'd maybe do it as much as in team, but maybe as in 7-on-7, definitely during that period where you're giving those other kids some work, but then you're backing off of Michael Mayer's workload because, everybody needs practice in college, but does he really need the full volume of practice? No. And then is a byproduct of that now Drew has to do more reads? Yes. But the driving force has to be, we need to back off Mayer a little bit because we know he's physically ready. We got to make sure his legs are fresh and his body doesn't get dinged up the remainder of the year. You can't lose him from the offense. So I would say that would be my reasoning for it, knowing that a byproduct is this. But I'm not taking him out just to force Drew Pine to go to other places because all that's going to do is, Drew's just going to go right back to him when he's in there. It's got to be a byproduct of it.
It's also alienating the best leader on your team right now, in my opinion, right? Like he's been kind of the glue that's been keeping things together offensively, for being honest. Like you're
punishing him for being targeted. Right.
Yes. And everything
not
we've
doing
heard of Michael Mayer is that he works, man. Like
Yeah.
every day in practice, he's a worker. So I'm not punishing him for being the hard worker and consistent good football player. Like I'm not doing that, man. Like he's earned he's earned everything that he gets. And that's kind of, I'm not punishing a kid for doing too well. Like that's so silly in my opinion. It's so silly.
Absolutely. But I understand I mean, it's silly, but I also completely understand where Josh is coming from. Because it's like you're just grasping at straws from how can you make him do this? So, like I said, if that's a byproduct of the real reason, which is you need to back off the workload of that kid in practice because you know he's going to be ready on Saturday. You know he is. Then yeah, that's cool. But I don't think you can do that you can't do it as the reason is so Drew can't look at him. Because again, you're now punishing your best player because your quarterback's looking at him too much, and I'm just not going there. Here's an interesting question, Ryan, because I kind of don't have a certain for sure answer on this. Keith Wiegand asked, do you guys think the D rotates too much? My answer would be sometimes. Yes. I do think at times
at every
it's
spot
hard
or certain spots?
No, more so up front.
Okay.
More so up front, and a little bit at safety. Okay. And the reason I say that is because I think sometimes I've kind of felt like in games they do so much rotating between the different personnel packages and all that it's like, are these guys really getting a chance to get into rhythm? Like what I liked about the Carolina game is because every time Carolina would go 12, they would immediately put in a different package. That I liked because I felt like when you went in that look, you knew exactly what your role was. Right. But I do feel like at times maybe it's overdone a little bit because you're not that you're rotating too many guys, but more so like, are guys really able to get into a rhythm of the game? Because I got to learn this guy's moves. I got to see what kind of, he does this. And so when he does this, I've rushed now 4 times outside. He's starting to do this. Now I know I can set him up with the next time on a double move. Well, the next time you're not in the game. Right. And so those are the things. That's why I'm usually pretty much against rotating corners, because I really feel like you need the whole game to really learn a guy's tells, his moves, his different things, that his giveaways and all that type of stuff. And if you're not seeing them consistently, then it's harder to kind of get into that kind of rhythm. So yeah,
that's interesting.
That's my.
I feel like I need to think about this one more, because my initial thought was no, but it wasn't like a no. It was like a maybe question mark. No, it's a tough one, because I think that there is. I mean, you made great points, right? Like there is a cohesiveness to how you rotate, to getting guys in rhythm and in the right spots. I guess I just need to think about it more, Keith, if I'm being honest. Like maybe ask me about this one after I chew on it for a couple of days, because I'm trying to think of like instances where I think it like hurt them, and I can't really come up with them off the top of my head. So I just need to think on that one. I think a little more. Chew on it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. It really is.
It is. It's thought-provoking.
Right. We both had the same initial reaction of no, because we both like rotating. But then kind of like, okay, you can do something, but not do it right. Something can be correct in theory, but wrong in execution. And so that's kind of my hold up. Here's an interesting comment from Brent Smith. Houston Griffith has quietly had a very nice year. However, DJ taking snaps away has hurt the secondary. What say you? I agree with the first part for sure. I do. I think Houston Griffith's had a really quietly solid year. He hasn't made any spectacular plays, but you know what he's also done? There was one open field tackle he missed, and I can't remember which game it was. But other than that, he's been where he needs to be consistently. Yeah. He's had a good year. DJ, I thought, was good early.
He was good early.
Yes. He was good early. But he's faded in the last few games. He has not been nearly as good in the last few games. So he was pretty good early in the year. He was. Yep. He was. So
I thought he had a pretty good game against Ohio State, DJ Brown. I thought he had a good nice game in that game.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So that's going to do it for the questions for today. Do it for today's questions. I appreciate everybody. We had some really good questions today, really good responses and engagement. There's a Elon Musk battle going on now in the chat, which is kind of funny to me. Hey, look, if you're going to engage in conversation, be respectful. Okay. You can disagree with someone, but be respectful in doing so. Okay. That's my advice for some of the responses that just came in. So just be better than that, folks. We all need to be better than that, including me. And I was very cranky yesterday. So I went off on a couple questions yesterday. I took a question by, I think it was Wayne Martin, and took it completely the wrong way because I'm not feeling good. I've been kind of sick all week. I was a little cranky yesterday. So I appreciate that. We actually did have one final question we got to get to, Ryan, that just popped up. Father David says, quick question, Ryan. What's the birthday cake of choice?
I know everybody's just going to like shun me for
You
this,
don't like
but
cake?
like I know I love cake. I love carrot cake. Carrot cake is the
Okay.
jam. So that's it, man.
I
Carrot cake.
like carrot. Yeah. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I can just get down with a good carrot cake. One time I did have a carrot cake that had a cheesecake layer in the middle of the carrot cake as well, which was fantastic. But yes, carrot cake is the jam. It is the jam.
I liked carrot cake until my freshman year of college. I went to a school whose cafeteria was so bad. Like the first day I went up, it was Methodist College in North Carolina. I put the spoon in the pasta to get it was like ziti, and when I lifted it up, the whole tray lifted up. I was like, yeah, I'm not eating this because it wouldn't break. It wouldn't like separate. It was like one big chunk. Basically, what I had every day for lunch that year was bologna sandwiches and carrot cake. It's the only two edible things they had. And sometimes you can have something so often you're like, no. So now, Ryan, would you have carrot cake as like a birthday cake? Like,
I literally did have
birthday?
cake. I had cake on Sunday for a happy birthday.
Your carrot cake? It was carrot cake?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Are there any other cakes that you do like, even if they're not your favorite?
Oh, I love all types of cakes. I mean, yeah.
What was your wedding cake flavors?
Our wedding cake was actually a vanilla cake that had a lemon curd in it and some berries and such. It was good. It was good. Okay. I'm a big lemon guy too. Love lemon.
I can only remember two of our flavors. We had amaretto flavor was one of our layers, and cherry chip was another one. And I can't remember what the third flavor was. I hope my wife's not listening right now because she's going to be really mad at me. But so what she would do then on our anniversary is she would then make, because my wife's, she doesn't like to bake, but when she does bake, she's really good at it. But she makes cherry chip cupcakes with amaretto frosting, and then she will bake like almonds, like she'll cut up almonds and bake them, like roast them, I should say, and then put those around it. It's phenomenal. And then like put a maraschino cherry right on top. It's phenomenal. Love them.
Nice.
So, and then for my birthday, she would make, because I'm not a big cake guy. I just don't like cake, period. I like chocolate cake. It's good. Somebody said
someone just said Mountain Dew.
I saw that.
Fantastic.
What I like is I'm more of a cupcake guy, and Angela will make a German chocolate cupcake on my birthday, which is really good. So yes, that's my favorite. But yeah, carrot cake. I've never heard that as a top option for a birthday, Ryan. As I turned that conversation about me. Yeah, no, it's not weird. It's unique. I think it's interesting. So you like other cakes. That's just your favorite cake.
Yeah, I'm an old man at heart, man. I love carrot cake.
All good, man.
I don't know why.
How's that an old thing?
I feel like you associate carrot cakes with old people. I think so.
Interesting. I never really thought about that.
Because it's got like raisins in it, like nuts and stuff.
Oh, see, I've never had carrot cake with raisins in it. At least not that I've tasted a raisin. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Learn something new every day. There you go. Ryan loves carrot cake. Good to know. All right. Well, Ryan, we'll have to get you a carrot cake tomorrow when we go out for dinner tomorrow night. So, it'll be a lot of fun. So, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.
You're gonna buy me a Tom Collins tomorrow too, and I'll drink it with my carrot cake.
We'll have to talk about that. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do that one, but I have to get you a carrot cake. So we'll have to see about that one. So anyway, does that have alcohol in it? Does Tom Collins have alcohol in it?
Yeah, it's an old-fashioned drink, like a mixed drink.
Yeah, you really are going old today. But no, I'll buy you something different. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's show, everybody. Great questions, great engagement for the most part in the chat. Thank you all for your patience with me yesterday. So I was a little cranky yesterday, but I think I'm in a little bit better mood today. Feeling a little bit better, not too much, but at least feeling a little bit better. But also looking forward to my trip this weekend and Ryan's trip this weekend. So it'll be good to hang out and watch a game together. This is actually the first game that you and I have watched together. We've been to two games. We've been to games in person together, but you were in the stands and I was in the press box. It'll be good to watch a game with you this time. So no cheering in the press box, Ryan. I have to remind you of that again.
I don't cheer.
Tomorrow.
I don't cheer.
So
I don't cheer.
There you go. Perfect.
I just pace. Am I allowed to
pace? A lot of former players don't have that problem. I've noticed.
Yeah.
Like if you played the game, you're not as much of, I don't know, maybe I could be wrong. Anyway, that's going to do it for today, everybody. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast. If you haven't done so and you are a loyal listener to the show and you like our show, go to your Apple Podcast or Spotify and leave us a 5-star review. We got to get some more 5-star reviews up there and pump those things. So we would greatly appreciate that, of course. And again, sign up for boards at irishbreakdown.com. I'm going to have a recruiting intel update tonight that I think y'all will enjoy a little bit. So I definitely want to check that out. So for Ryan, I'm Brian. We will have one more show tonight. Sean Stiers and I believe Jesse Stiers, who has been, have you listened to, you've listened to their show before. Jesse does a really good job. If you haven't listened to that show, of course, Vince does a great job, but Jesse does a really good job. When Sean came to me about having Jesse be a occasional kite, I was like, okay, dude, you want to have your kid on there? Whatever. I'll let you have that perk to get you over here. And I'm like, whatever. Because I know Jesse. I actually recruited Jesse to come when I was coaching the Defiance. I actually recruited Jesse. He was a really good linebacker in high school. Did you see 10 days? Did you see 10 days response? He's joking about what you had on Twitter yesterday. Well done, 10 days.
Yeah.
Very well played, my friend. But then you listen to Jesse and you're like, boy, he does a really good job. And he's very similar to kind of what we do. So he kind of brings that breakdown aspect to it. So if you haven't listened to Sean and Jesse, the father and son duo, check them out tonight on IB Nation Sports Talk. So that'll be their last show. Ryan and I will have a show for tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And then, of course, 10 to noon on Saturday, Vince and Sean will have IB Nation countdown to kickoff, the IB countdown to kickoff. So check all of that stuff out. But like, subscribe, notification, share, leave us a 5-star review. But more importantly, have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Irish Breakdown Podcast.